And welcome to the Kelly and Righty Show. Righty's away, so plenty time to step up.
I'll try my best as we talk two huge matches this weekend with the two title challengers going head-to-head, as well as the North London derby.
We'll also be talking teams that have gone under the radar, for better or for worse, in the company of Darren Lewis and Tim Sherwood.
But we start with the European champions who faced the team they beat to earn that status. Thomas Tuchel earned plaudits for the way his team beat Spurs last weekend. Let's hear what he made of it.
Actually, we did not change the system, but that's maybe the whole point. It seems like we changed the system, but we just played the system with more belief, with more energy, with more quality, sharper. It was simply too sloppy, not sharp enough. We relied only on our skillful play in the first half, but I had the feeling that we forgot to bring the right attitude and energy to this game. So there were already individual performances that were on a high level, for example Thiago or for example Kepa, but as a team we allowed too many chances. We had way too easy ball losses, not enough ball possession, and we had the feeling that every duel, every 50-50 duel goes against us. So this had to change, and if you have N'Golo on the bench and you want to step up in exactly these patterns of the game, it's the best player to bring because he's unique and he can change any momentum. So it seemed to be, from characteristic, first of all, a bit more defensive, but we wanted to improve our compactness, our ball wins, our closing, our spirit as a team, and have a higher intensity and work rate in our match to win balls actively and put the match in the opponent's half, and then rely on our skills. That was the idea behind it, and I am happy with the reaction. The reaction was absolutely needed. But we showed it and played a very, very strong second half to deserve this win.
I'm so interested to see Chelsea against Manchester City this weekend, because really we've got the two pre-season title favourites going head-to-head.
We have, yeah. I mean, we spoke about it before the season started. Chelsea, they addressed the issue that they had last season, which was scoring goals. We certainly thought that if they could get that final piece of the jigsaw, they'd be in with a title chance. They went and signed Lukaku for record money. He's proven to be the right signing. Manchester City, on the other hand, went to go and get Harry Kane, didn't get him, but still have got some of the best attacking players that are out there. You're talking about 6 or 7 to fill 3 slots up the front. So you'd have to say that the way both teams have started, probably Chelsea, probably more so, a little bit more impressive. But yeah, I still make these two teams, along with Liverpool, the title favourites for this season. And
this is going to be a real test of how they balance up against each other. We'll get an idea of who, at least at the moment, is just ahead.
Yeah, I think we're getting an idea and a good look of how Thomas Tuchel, how good he is. I mean, if anyone's watching this interview and they're not convinced by this guy, the players are convinced. And I think fans are. He does not no spin. You know, you see spin and baffling with science with managers now. He tells you how it is. It wasn't a change of system against Tottenham. He just needed to tweak it. He brings on Kante, he increases his tempo, he blows their legs apart. Tottenham were finished, couldn't live with it, couldn't live with that intensity. He's clear and incisive of what his decisions are. So I always give Man City the advantage because of Pep Guardiola, because I'm not sure how good Tuchel is. Now we know how good this guy is. At Anfield, they go down to 10 men. They still control the tempo of the football match. He's a proper manager, a top draw manager with a top draw group of players. With Lukaku in the side now, at the beginning of the season, I would have said obviously Liverpool got a fantastic chance, got all their players back to fitness now. Van Dijk, Hughes, you can play Henderson in the midfield and Fabinho in there. Yes, they're going to be there. Ronaldo now coming at Man United gives them a chance, but with Tuchel there, with Lukaku, I've put them right out there with City. You're absolutely right. I think it's a 2-horse race between them two. Well, it's a 4-horse race, but I would say
it's a 2 with two favourites.
It's a 4-horse race. The top 4's done. I don't know what order they're going to be in, but if you was asking me to push now, I would say because of the two managers of Man City and Chelsea, I put them as 2 of the favourites.
Do you look at the teams who are level on points at the top of the table, and Manchester City aren't in amongst that, but that's not to say that they aren't going to be there come the end of the season. But because Chelsea, of the two, have had the better start,
yeah,
people will be starting to think, like Tim, they're looking the real deal here. This is really when we're going to tell whether they are or not, isn't it?
I think that's why for us pressmen this is such a good and quite an exciting season ahead, because around about this time there were doubts about Pep Guardiola as well. They'd started slowly. There were doubts about whether he was going to stay, whether the side was getting stale, whether he'd signed a new contract, and lots of people felt they'd reached the end of the cycle. I even remember reading some pieces about exactly that. Signed a contract, suddenly they clicked into gear and they ran away with it and nobody could stop them. It's interesting that in their 5 wins so far this season, they've scored 23 goals. You know, they know where the goal is. But having said that, at this level, as you rightly say, when you're up against a side of comparable ability and a guy who pays attention to the details like Tuchel, if you don't have a striker, they can find a way to neutralise you. And that's why I would give Chelsea the edge. The only thing I disagree with slightly is that, well, you know, because you've won the title, the best defence tends to win the title. Chelsea have only conceded 1 goal so far this season. Liverpool have only conceded 1 goal so far this season, and between those two. But I do agree that top 4, it's a lock. The 2 Manchester clubs, Chelsea and Liverpool. No other team for me will get into that top 4.
When you look at these 2 teams now and you compare them to last season in this same fixture, when Manchester City ran all over Chelsea, they were 3-1 winners at the end of it. It was one of Frank Lampard's last game in charge. So that was after Manchester City had started to get up and running for the season. That was sort of January time. They feel like they're 2 teams in a completely different place going into this one. Well,
Chelsea certainly are, because as you said there, under Frank, I mean, he made a couple of decisions in terms of selections. You look at Alonso, you look at Tony Rudiger. I think Rudiger was on his way to Spurs at one stage. Alonso was going elsewhere. But then when you look at, he came in, tweaked a few things, changed the formation, made them to a back 3. They looked a lot more solid going forward. So yeah, I can't see that happening again this time. I mean, Manchester City, as you call it, have got firepower, a lot of attacking players, defensively, very, very good. But when you look at Chelsea and the way that they're playing and the energy, and obviously, as I said, signing someone like Lukaku, he's now starting to fit players into their correct positions, because we saw again under Frank where he made a couple of decisions where he was playing. He obviously played Kante a bit further forward at times, and he was playing Mason Mount maybe in a position that didn't really suit him. He didn't quite know how to get the best out of Timo Werner. Straight away, Thomas Tuchel came in. He addressed that. I know Timo Werner was still missing chances, of course. But this season now, they look a lot stronger than they did last season by playing him from the left and Lukaku down the middle. Can
I just add to that? I mean, Tuchel manages pressure very well. I think that's the most striking aspect of his management. I bet you PSG look at the decision to sack him and think, what did we do? Because they're all over the place now. Whereas Tuchel has gone to Chelsea, they give him big players, they spend big money. Werner doesn't score as many goals, he's not been the hit they wanted him to be. No one hardly talks about it. You know, us guys put pressure on him.
He wasn't brought in as Tuchel either, which is...
Well, yeah, but I think essentially his job is almost to make the component parts better. But what he's done is make the team better. So if somebody's not functioning within that team, they kind of get the space to be able to find their feet. Kepa, for example, his confidence is back to where he wanted it to be. Werner is able to kind of just... You're right, he's still not anywhere there, and he was brought in beforehand, but at the moment, this guy could change Coke into Pepsi. You know, I mean, he is so good. So I think as far as his ability to be able to empower the team and to create that defensive base and to cope with the pressure of having to get goals out of Lukaku, who's flying, and manage the expectations of the fan base, and you know, even cope with us guys in the media saying, you know, if he doesn't win the Champions League, is it a failed season, whatever else? And he does it. He's done everything. I think a game like this now, I mean, he's won the last 2, is it, or 3 against City. He's got a really good record against Guardiola. Nothing phases this guy. And that's what I think is his biggest hallmark.
You know, when you talk about Timo Werner as well, he's found the way of getting the best out of him in terms of without putting too much pressure on him.
Yeah.
Because he was brought in to score the goals. Didn't quite happen for him. Brought Lukaku in, he's moving to the left. But even now, the way he's managing him, bringing him on late on games, I mean, you see him against Spurs when he comes on, he absolutely torments them. Should have had a couple of goals himself, missed a couple of big chances. So it's not even about the team that it starts with. It's even making the right substitutions at the right time, knowing how to use Timo Werner, but not also putting a lot of pressure on him as well. So I think his man management is underrated as well. I think he's a very, very good manager.
Sorry, Kika, I know you're the mover. Forgive me for this, but
no, listen. If we have anything on the show, we have time.
You know, but if you look at Saul, is a really good example. Last weekend, came to the club, fantastic player, but had an awful start. Took him off at half time. Nobody's talking about him. because the team are doing well. The team are scoring goals. The team are keeping clean sheets. I think it's 3 times now they've scored 3 goals. Last weekend against Spurs, as you were saying, if they were a racehorse, the further away they go, the further away they pull away, because they are just a class above. And that's all down to Tuchel. So you get the opportunity, these guys know far more than me, to be able to find your feet within a team that's winning and doing well than you do within a team that's struggling. Because when you're struggling, us guys in the media say, yeah, he's not getting the best out of Werner, not getting the best out of Sal, not getting the best out of this person or that person. But at the moment, because he's doing well, all those individual players are getting the time to find their feet.
How many players, I mean, the key component for any manager at Chelsea is managing the ones who are not playing. We don't even hear about the ones who are not playing. Not even talking about them, because how would you feel Darren knocking on his door and saying, why am I not getting in the team? You know you're going to get a straight answer. You know, he's not going to give you any flanner. He's going to say, listen, you're not playing because he's better than you at the moment. As long as you continue to train hard, when you get the shirt, it's up to him to get it off you. Easy. As a player, it's honesty. You know what to expect. I think it's a waste of time them knocking on his door saying, why am I not playing? Helps when the team wins every week, but he's got all the answers at the moment. He can just tweak his formations. Darren's absolutely right. And Frank, it was glaringly obvious, needed to play 3 at the back. It suited more of the squad, what he had. Rudiger's just a giant now at the back there. I mean, it's, Thiago Silva in with him, Christensen, who was getting bombed out, back in the fold. He's still got academy kids coming through there. Mason Mount's still playing there. Like Gilmore's had to go on loan to Norwich, which would be a good experience for him.
Jorginho was unhappy as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, there's so many of them. Alonso, you know, he's incredible. And the pressure, I mean, Kai Havertz hasn't done it. I mean, he's a big reputation. We're talking about Timo Werner. Kai Havertz hasn't done it. But he's what he has done, and Chelsea fans will tell us, and Thomas will tell us, and so will Roman Abramovich, scored in a Champions League final. You know, so he ain't done bad, but as a whole, over the period, it's not delivered.
The honesty question's a really interesting one, because it goes back to what Darren was saying about Saul and bringing him off at half-time, and normally, you know, a player would be devastated if that happened to them. Thomas Tuchel came out in the post-match interview, which I think was as revealing as anything else, and said he just wasn't playing well. He'll be fine. It's just his first 45 minutes. He didn't really cope with it, but he'll get better. And that honesty that you're talking about was reflected in that interview. Yeah,
and it's out there on the open. I mean, no one's asked him, Saul, what did the manager say to him? He's told them. I mean, it's not detrimental against Saul.
And it's not necessarily criticism of your player. It's an honest appraisal.
And he's not insulting the intelligence of the fans, is he? By giving you some spiel about is this because it was that, and excuse after excuse. It was glaringly obvious for anyone who knows football that he wasn't up to speed with the Premier League. It is the most competitive league in the world. When he comes from Spain, I've had that scenario before with Soldado. The goals he was scoring in Spain, incredible. Couldn't do it in the Premier League. Unfortunately, he never had the support act what Thomas has got there, which will help him through. I mean, like Kante is going to be there, and Kovacic, you know, Jorginho. I mean, good luck to try and break into that but he will find a way. He will drop him in there at the right time, and the boy will be a success, or he will give him the best chance to be a success. In the end, he knows the cut-off period. If he's not doing it, he will just get rid of him, because he's fortunate, because he's at Chelsea, they can do that.
Do you know what's helped him as well, Thomas Tuchel, was that he made a few ruthless decisions at the start, didn't he? So that kind of set everyone up for what he was going to be about. You look at the cuts on the door, dragging him off after, 25 minutes. Or there was a couple of others players, I can't remember, where he was talking about they weren't playing well and got them off. So now, when he does it, there's not a story around it. He's like, well, this is why I'm doing it. And as Tim's saying there's no spiel. He said, look, you've seen me do it from the moment I got here. So now I'm doing it now. There's no questions you can ask of me. And I think even the Chelsea players now will go, well, I kind of expected it now, like he's done it before. If I'm not up to scratch, he is not scared to make the ruthless decision. And it doesn't matter what player it is, how big you are. If you're not pulling your weight, you're coming straight off.
It brings us sort of back to Werner again and that point, because you've made this point before that actually Lukaku coming in
helps him.
Will help Werner. Rather than seeing it as competition or being undermined, it just sort of takes a little bit of pressure off. Maybe allows him, we're not necessarily in the numbers, but maybe allows him to improve.
Yeah, of course, because I look at Timo Werner and I don't think he ever wanted to be the main man. I think, of course, he scored a lot of goals at Leipzig, a load of goals in the last season before he left, but I still never looked at him as he wanted to be that vocal point, like he wanted to be that number 9 that was going to score all these goals for Chelsea. But I think with Thomas Tuchel and Lukaku coming in, I think he might have a better season because the responsibility's off him, but he's one of them players also as well. Because of the pace, you have to keep playing him. You can't leave him out because he stretches the pitch and his movement is very, very good. I know offside last season, he a bit silly with the run sometimes, but in terms of his movement, getting them behind, creating opportunities for other people, stretching the pitch for the likes of Mason Mount, Kai Havertz to pick up them intelligent positions, he's so important to the team. And then when you add Lukaku's goals to it, he plays better with a big man anyway, Timo Werner. So you might just see, and as you said there, the numbers might not reflect that he's doing better, but he'll get more opportunities now playing alongside Lukaku than maybe he would have got last season. That's
a huge signing from Lukaku, obviously. But Roman Abramovich is not giving him that money if he doesn't trust him as a manager. He's come in there, he changed around their fortunes, he won the Champions League, he said, I've got my man here. What do you need? I need Lukaku. Can we win the Premier League if we get Lukaku? Yes, we can. Exactly what Liverpool did when they were convinced about Jurgen Klopp. We go and get Alisson, we go and get Van Dijk, fix their problem. Their problem at Chelsea...
It took him a couple of years to earn that trust, though.
But you earn the trust.
Thomas Tuchel's had it from the get-go.
There's a lot of managers, and we'll talk about them later in the show, where the owners and the directors do not trust the manager, so they keep giving them the 20 million player, the 30 million pound player. They're not going to get... There's no resale value on Lukaku, none whatsoever. Can he deliver us the Premier League? Absolutely. Get him in.
But that's the difference between spending £90 million on, I don't know, a player that is a glamour player, that is a kind of a publicity signing, a celebrity signing, if you like, and looking at your squad and saying, this is what we need to make it better, this is how much money we've got available to spend, and it's the right player. And then suddenly, the money doesn't look frivolous. It looks well spent.
Well, let's look at Alisson. Look at Alisson and Van Dijk. How much would you sell them for tomorrow? I mean, a lot more money.
Or you could compare Alisson with Kepa, if we're talking Chelsea, when they went out and broke the record just after Alisson had been the record-breaking goal keeper fee, whatever. Throw those words up in the air. See where they land. You know what I mean. But Kepa, Chelsea went out and broke the record the next day, I think it was. But it didn't work out for him. So suddenly Alisson looks like money well spent and Kepa looks like, not so much now, but money wasted.
Yeah, money wasted. But with the owner of what they got at Chelsea there now, if they're winning trophies, he doesn't think anything's a waste. Up to the man, I mean, you see Kepa comes in against Tottenham, plays last night in the Carabao Cup. I mean, when they're kissing and cuddling on the pitch, the manager and him, I mean, he's totally left him out. Left him out, but he still has that relationship, a professional relationship.
Is that hard to do?
Absolutely, because some of them will throw their toys out the pram. I think it's easier if you're honest, and 100% he's honest. I mean, he's had a good rehearsal at it with the Galacticos. He was at PSG. I mean, he's at a club full of superstars, so he knows he cannot all play. So he's had to learn how to deal with it. Where when he was at Dortmund, he would have had a team full of players. He probably had a basic squad, and there was some superstars in there, and the ones who didn't play were expected not to play. They all expect to play. They're all world-class international players at Chelsea and at PSG, so it's difficult to control, and he's learned how to do it brilliantly.
There's a really interesting managerial comparison here, because you've got Thomas Tuchel, who's gone into Chelsea, made small tweaks really to start with, won the Champions League and finished inside the top four, then has gone on the next season with the addition of an expensive centre-forward and looks like he's in serious challenge for the Premier League title. And then Pep Guardiola, who went in and had success with Manchester City, but it felt like the club was sort of building for him, or was being built for him. How do you compare them as managers?
I think they're very different in styles, and they're different in characters as well. I think Pep's very honest behind closed doors. I think Thomas is very honest to everyone. He comes and talks. I mean, Pep could do without talking to the media, really. And he says he's got a script in front of the press. He has to do the duty, and he does it. But when he's talking to the players, I think he's very honest as well. But I also think that you can get on the wrong side of Pep, and I think he's not afraid of burning bridges because he's got the players and he can discard them. I think Thomas is a little bit different. Unless they was really, really unprofessional, I don't think he would burn a bridge with a player. He would try and keep a happy medium with him.
That's really interesting. I mean, if you look at Pep at City, Sane burnt his bridge with, sold him to Bayern Munich. Aguero, at the end of the season, he was gushing about Aguero, and then Aguero's dad came out and said, actually, no, the relationship ain't great.
Yaya was another one, wasn't he? You said about him.
Yaya Toure as well, not very disparaging about him. I think they've tried to make it up since, or at least Yaya has. But there are a number of players, as you say, where Pep said one thing, but the truth has been very different, and that has come from the player or people around the player, whereas with Tuchel, Tuchel is very honest and open about his relationships with some players, other players. If he can't, that old thing, if you can't say something nice, just don't say anything at all. Well, that's very Tuchel. But for example, Tammy Abraham, he just didn't have a place for him in the side. And so he didn't make any kind of pretense about the fact that Abraham was still in his plans. He just said, we're trying to find solutions for him. And there is a clarity about the way he manages that leaves everybody in no doubt about where they stand. For us as media guys, it's fantastic because it's very refreshing to deal with somebody like that. For you guys as players, I would imagine it's fantastic.
Yeah. And they're both, they're contrasting styles, but they're both right. They're both correct styles. There's no right or wrong. Because the reason why there's no right or wrong, because they deliver trophies. So what they do, when you win as a football manager, everything you do is right.
Yeah, but when you don't win.
When you don't win, you come under criticism.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've got to expect that. And Pep's no stranger to criticism. Yeah. He knows, because he puts that pressure on himself. And Tuchel will come in. I mean, he's done nothing wrong at the moment. I mean, it's been plain sailing for Tuchel. Yeah. And it's easy. When you come in initially and you start winning, you're in the Champions League. Listen, you could say to the players, I want you to stand over there on your head for 10 minutes. They're going to do it. They're listening to you all of the time. You're the man who's bringing silverware to the club. He's next. He needs to win the Premier League. And Roman Abramovich, he'd be under no illusions, Thomas Tuchel. I brought Lukaku into you. I've given you everything you need. You need to deliver me that trophy. That domestic trophy is what I know. And Pep will be under the same pressure to win the Champions League.
When you look at Thomas Tuchel at the end of last season, though, there were whispers at the end of the season when they just about got into the top four. They lost the FA Cup final, weren't playing particularly well. People were saying,
fine margins,
if he starts off this season badly, he might be out of a job. Obviously, it helps that he goes on and wins the Champions League. But
it helps anyone, that, doesn't it?
I mean, it plays over all the cracks. But as I said, going to that club, Chelsea, I mean, where they've had so many managers, and Roman Abramovich is ruthless. You'd have to say he is ruthless. But I think it's one of the most obvious jobs as well, in terms of exactly what to do when you get there. Like, if you deliver trophies and you do well, then you'll stay. But quite obviously, if you don't deliver the trophies or results, you'll be straight out. So it's quite straight. At least it's straight down the middle, and you know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, it sounds like that sort of clarity seems like a perfect match, actually, between Chelsea and Thomas Tuchel. Although previously his rows haven't been necessarily with players; they have been with hierarchy, and that's what we've sort of seen from him before. Let's sort of talk a bit more about Manchester City, because since Pep Guardiola has come in, obviously it's all been based on this. Look, the defence has been really good, but it's all been based, and when we think of Manchester City, we think about that great attacking football, we think about the goals, we think about the sort of beautiful side of the game, but they don't have a number 9. And he did want a number 9. So this isn't about saying, oh, Pep Guardiola is wrong for playing a certain way or playing with a false 9 or whatever you want to call it. It's just asking the question of, if he wanted one, are they going to miss out on having one this season, do you think?
Well, it looks like it. I mean, I know Florentino Torres is kind of filling that void at the minute. But I think, as I said, when you've got that many attacking options in them front areas where they pop up all over the place, they're unpredictable to play against, I think they're going to cause a lot of teams problems. But on the flip side, they might have a few more results like the Southampton, where games are really tight, they can't really open them up, and you need that centre-forward's instinct to be in there where it hurts, in that 6-yard box, just to finish it off. But I just think with the quality that they've got, they'll always find a way. But it might be results like the Southampton, or games that are that tight where you haven't got that centre-forward, where the title's won and lost, because I don't think they can do what they did last season, Manchester City, where they had a really bad start to the season, they then played catch-up, won all them games in a row, and then ultimately walked the league. I think the league's too strong this year. Chelsea are better, United are better, and Liverpool are better. So I think the fact that they haven't signed the centre-forward, it's going to be them fine margins that might cost them winning the title this year. And you look at that, and you look at the other teams on there, and there are the big games that you'd expect, the likes of the ones against Manchester United, Liverpool, Chelsea, but you also look at the dates on there, and so many of them are from Pep Guardiola's earlier time at Manchester City, and the fact that came against Southampton and came last week, is that significant, do you think, Tim, in terms of City's season?
I just think I find it really difficult to write off.
No, we're not writing off. We're just asking about one aspect.
No, but I think we're trying to say that they're crap. But we're absolutely, they're not, are they? I mean, we know how
they're
good.
Not. They're brilliant,
we know how good they are.
In the games in which they've won,
we don't want to believe what Darren's saying.
What
Darren's saying, we don't want to believe. We don't want to believe a team can win the Premier League without a centre forward again. I mean, I wouldn't put it past him to be able to do it. He shares the goals around. Look, Foden scores a number of goals last year. He's been out injured, been fit. Gundogan's been out with his injuries as well. They scored a number of goals last year. I agree. He would have wanted a centre forward. I also like the fact that they haven't gone out there and just bought anyone. They targeted a man like Harry Kane. If they couldn't get him, he didn't want to say, well, let's just take him, because he can develop Ferran Torres. We've seen he's pushed Jesus out onto the right-hand side now. He finds a way. And I think we're wrong to look at, oh, that was just last week. We've got to give credit to Southampton for keeping them quiet, sat nice and deep. They couldn't break them down. It happens. Next week, they might win 4 or 5 against Chelsea.
Do you know what the thing is, though, Tim?
Actually, yeah,
maybe
sorry.
not.
I mean, next week.
The only thing is, Tim, I think this season, though, you look at last season where they were able to do that. Chelsea are a lot stronger this season, because last season, under Frank, a little bit indifferent. Liverpool had all their players out. They weren't nowhere near as strong. Manchester United look a completely different outfit with Ronaldo. I don't think this season they can afford to play, like, fall behind so far and then just win 22 games in a row and catch others. I think they'll be fourth if they try that.
No, I agree. I hope you're right, because we don't want to believe it. Because if he does manage to pull that off, then listen, it depends where Tottenham are by January.
He's done it before, and not just at Manchester City. You know, he has done it before without that kind of focal striking. He had Lewandowski at Bayern Munich, but I don't think that was necessarily a kind of ideal position for Pep Guardiola. So it's not, it's not out of the ordinary that he's doing it like this. The reason that I think the question's an interesting one is because they did try to get Harry Kane, and it from everything that you hear, it was something that Pep Guardiola really wanted, which makes you think it's something that Pep Guardiola really needed and felt that the team really needed, and that might prove to be the difference.
Oh, he needed that player, because that player is a make-the-difference player. I mean, he didn't need a centre-forward. Just go and get me a centre-forward. I need Harry Kane. Okay. Because Harry Kane, if they would have got Harry Kane, everyone else might as well, with Lukaku, with Ronaldo, they might as well put the shutters down and gone home. Because Man City, with that quality in forward areas and that defence what they have now with a goalkeeper, with Harry Kane, over. No more bets. Man City would have won the Premier League. I think there's still a chance, depending on where Tottenham are in January, they might get him in January and might give him an injection they need for the back end of the season. But like Darren's saying, hopefully they're not too far behind.
Joe, we're going to talk a bit more about Harry Kane when we look ahead to the North London derby. So we will continue that conversation, because I think it's a very interesting one. But look, in terms of this game, in terms of Manchester City, they're a tiny bit off the pace at a very early age, a very early stage, rather, of the season. As Darren said, there's a difference between what they did last season, which was come from quite far behind, and then just go on that incredible run. But it does feel that there are not necessarily fewer margins for error, because it feels like more teams will drop points this season. But it does feel as though it's much tighter at the top.
I definitely think it's much tighter. And I actually think there is a smaller margin for error, largely because Liverpool are so defensively strong. They're conceding so few goals, and Chelsea have come flying out of the traps. And in the first press conference of the season, Tuchel was saying to us, we know that we have to start fast. I watched their opening game, and they were very impressive. And as Piliqueta spoke to a few of us afterwards and said, look, we know how good City were last season, and we know how far they won by. So we have to make sure that they are under pressure right from the start. And that's why I don't think City can afford to have too many games where they don't score or they can't get shots on target, because Chelsea will keep winning, and if they can't win, they'll be so defensively strong that they can't be beaten, whereas City do have that capacity to lose the odd game here or there. In this season, you can't do that, because certainly those two, Liverpool and Chelsea, United, they're still they're still defensively fragile, and they can shoot themselves in the foot even though they can score goals, whereas Liverpool and Chelsea, I think there are so many options at their disposal. They made 10 changes for their Carabao Cup team in midweek, and they were still such a wonderful side. Kanté in that midfield with Saul alongside him. I think that City have got it all to do this season to win the league.
I just think the teams you're talking about, I mean, Chelsea are so dependent on Lukaku. If they was to lose him, I think they'll come back to the pack. And Liverpool, obviously, with Van Dijk, lose Van Dijk again, you've got the same old problems. All right, Gomez is fit again now. And obviously Ronaldo, they think is going to make the difference in the big games for United. So dependent on one player. I don't think Man City are dependent on
Liverpool lost Van
one.
Dijk,
I think they'd be all right. I think they'd be okay, Liverpool.
I think they would.
Yeah, me too.
Konate could come in there. Konate looks a wonderful footballer.
Yeah.
I think he could slot in there. Gomez is back as well, fit again. Matip is fit again as well.
Mane started off really well this season.
But I know you want to play against. You want you.
Oh yeah, nowhere near Van Dijk.
There you go.
Listen,